folks. This is Mark Anthony Williams once again with the podcast. So you want to be a safety professional. I've got a special guest today. I've got Phil Ingryson. He is the adjunct faculty at Georgia Tech, and he's also the VP, the Vice President at ProSafe Solutions. Our topic we'll be discussing today is called the Domino Effect, lining up management systems, human behavior, and safety culture. Philip, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful and happy to talk to you.
Awesome. I'm glad you could join us. My first question for you, Philip, is how does human behavior interact with and impact safety systems in a workplace environment?
Well, that's a long answer,
right?
But we'll probably start with they really interact each other.
Okay.
And so on one hand, safety, the main thing is human error, that people are not robots and they make mistakes. And sometimes that's a little bit hard for management to understand.
Right.
But everybody makes mistakes. And so sometimes the workplace systems that we have make a worker more prone to make a mistake. But then also the human errors kind of bring to light the flaws in our management systems. Yes.
Right. It's like we can't, I think about the safety cop versus safety coach approach, right? That in itself is a system of doing safety. And people don't even realize that, but that impacts how people see and perceive safety and safety culture.
It does. And, you know, there's a lot of history with that the safety cop and, you know, for the record, I've played that role myself. So I admit I've done it the wrong way, but, you know, we kind of started the whole safety mission with identifying what's wrong. And that there's a system, right? There's a system where we started in safety to send people out there. Where's the OSHA violation or where's the thing that's wrong? And that system influenced people to correct the human doing the wrong thing without a lot of understanding of why they did the wrong thing and why our systems influence that. And so, people still think that way today, right? People still think that's their job, is to find out what's wrong and correct it.
It's almost like a gotcha. And, you know, I think that shifting into a more positive landscape of you want to reinforce positive behaviors. You know, you want to celebrate the wins. You want to encourage people to do the right thing. You don't want them to just do what you say is the right thing because, you know, like you don't know everything. You do need that input so you can calibrate and make things better over time.
Well, those are two things that are really important that you just said. That one, we do want to reinforce positive behavior, and that's become a lot more popular over the past few decades. But a lot of times people think it's okay, so correct them where they're wrong and then give them the attaboy or the pat on the back when they're doing something right. And although that's good, what's more important is the second thing you said. We need information from the frontline worker about how our systems are actually working on the front line.
Exactly.
And a lot of
it's not perfect. It's a Swiss cheese model. There's always going to be gaps. How am I supposed to get a feedback loop on fixing those gaps?
That's right. And, you know, I think that's the hardest part of all of it, because it's just the way humans work. A lot of humans struggle with this superior inferior type model where I'm higher on the org chart. I know more than you. My job is to tell you, to correct you, to guide you, when really the most important part for anybody on that higher level supervisor, manager, whether safety or whatever, is what can I learn from the frontline worker? And some people struggle with that.
I don't know why. But it brings me to my next question here is, what are some of the challenges in aligning management systems with human behavior and safety culture? And how do you propose we can overcome them? You've been doing safety for a long time, especially safety culture management.
Sure. So, you know, what I always see as the greatest challenge is dealing with the leadership component.
Okay.
And, you know, I was working on a report this week, and what is pretty common is for people to pick the easy stuff, like access to PPE is flawed. Can we make it more readily accessible? And those kind of technical, rational things, I think that companies are pretty good at addressing. But at the same time, okay, we don't have good leadership traits in a lot of our supervisors, and they kind of shy away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot to why do people struggle with that? Sometimes they don't know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes upper management might not have the greatest leadership traits either. And so then when they're supposed to deal with middle management and their leadership traits, well, how are you going to improve that if you don't have it inside of you to
That's
begin
true.
with, right?
Exactly. It's like the blind leading the blind a little bit there.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of times managers focus on what they think their job is to manage these cogs in the wheel. Well, they're supposed to lead and influence those cogs in the wheel also. And so management has to learn great leadership traits. They have to go out in the field, teach, coach, redirect as necessary leadership traits of the supervisors. And then the most important one, and this is the one most people struggle with, hold them accountable for it.
That's
And
true.
by accountable, I mean, it really does affect pay raises and promotion. And
I
a
think
lot of,
we
go
assume
ahead.
accountability always means, the carrot and the stick, like you're going to get in trouble. I don't think accountability always has to be something so negative.
No. I mean, if you can flip it around, it's a positive that, you want to move up in the organization. This is the path, right? I mean, you want to be considered for the promotion. This is the path. You want the raise. This is the path. And everybody likes money, right? I mean, that's a positive. But yeah, that's the one that people struggle with the most. And so, how to overcome it. I mean, I think that, step one is anybody in a leadership role, especially upper management, especially the C-suite, should have a system for regular learning, regular evaluation of leadership traits. It needs to be formalized, needs to be on paper. And are we measuring all that? Do we have a deep commitment to personal growth at the top of the organization?
Right.
And from there, tweak that model where it's clearly communicated. So can I go to a construction site and go up to a superintendent and say, how are you measured on your leadership effectiveness? And how does it affect your pay raises and promotions? And can they give me a crystal clear answer?
Do they understand it themselves? Because if they
Yeah,
don't understand it, they're not going to really value it. They're not going to practice it.
that's
They
right.
just move it up to the air like a lottery ticket. Like, well, if I get the bonus, I get the bonus. If I don't, I don't. But what's important is that I keep this job.
That's right. Oh,
I
and
met so many people like that.
if you took something different, and just, I know it's a safety thing we're doing here, but if you asked a superintendent, how are you measured on production? I guarantee you they could give you a crystal clear answer, right? But can they do that on the leadership traits? And really even measuring on safety performance, that's one that a lot of, I mean, there's still a lot that respond with, number of injuries or EMR or something like that. And which is not what we want to hear, but that's, even safety is a little fuzzy for how people even know how they're measured.
So if we were to say, how can we, foster a positive safety culture, and we're talking about the role management plays, probably a biggest part of this whole system is clarifying and transparency, and what really matters to the company. What are the company's values and what it really means in action, like defining the actions of those values.
Yeah, that is what you said is so important, that values is fuzzy too for a lot of people. I mean, you go to most company websites and you look at the safety page, and it's something about, we don't want anybody to get hurt, or
zero injuries,
all that kind of stuff. And okay, all that, it sounds good, but what the heck does that mean, right? I mean, because we're still having injuries, so obviously we're not meeting our values, right? But
next year.
I think and you didn't say it. And this is what I love about you, because I know your brain and you think higher. But I love how you use the word value, because a lot of people use the word priority, and priority is something that shifts all the time. We didn't get concrete for a week, and then it showed up, and all our priorities changed, and now we're kind of focused more on production. That stuff happens, and it's normal, and we should accept that it's normal. But when you use values that are crystal clear, like we have a value system that we will never remove the shoring until the concrete has reached sufficient strength.
Right.
We will never have an unprotected trench. And we're
Mm-hmm.
very specific. Okay, so we've got some of these minor things, and sometimes the safety ball is going to slip a little bit, but there are some things that are non-negotiables. Those are crystal clear values. And so can I go to a frontline worker and say, hey, what are the non-negotiable values here?
Mm-hmm.
If they respond with something like, well, you can't ever not have your safety glasses on, it's like, But if they say something like, okay, we can never do energized work unless we have a signed off permit by the client, and then we have it reviewed by our manager that we have the right arc flashed up. Oh, well, there you go. There's a crystal clear value.
Very much so.
But I mean, that's not the catchy one-liner on the hard hat sticker, right? And so, a lot of times people, they want to have that catchy one-liner that sounds good on their webpage or the hard hat sticker, but real values, it's like the 10 Commandments. I mean, it takes a couple pages to write them out,
Right.
So, yeah.
And you think about how to enact them, it has to show in everything that the company does, I would think, right? But
amen.
And I get that things, external factors come up, and it makes me even wonder, like, how do external factors, like regulations and industry standards, even the norms in the industry, how do they influence the shaping of safety culture in an organization? Let's talk about construction. What have you seen?
Yeah, so there's both are true there. That on one side, I believe that the construction industry shapes OSHA more than OSHA shapes the construction industry. And what I mean by that is we tried to do personal fall arrest and wood frame construction, then OSHA changed the law. We were trying to deal with silica better, then OSHA changed the law. We wanted certified operators for cranes, then OSHA changed the law. So when it comes to OSHA, I think the industry influences OSHA more than OSHA influences us.
That's fair.
And I say that in the context of the high performers in safety. In the low performers in safety, OSHA kind of influences them that, hey, you better do this or you get in trouble.
Right.
But there's a whole other side to that take something like NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. They include human performance topics inside of their policy, their suggestions. I'm going to say,
right.
We could get into all, is it law or not, but their guidance for energized work includes higher level safety management concepts. And so when people follow them, it influences them in a better way on how they do the work.
Sure.
And you could say the same thing with, some ANSI standards. You could say the same thing with the ACVIH and what's a PEL versus a TLV and which we should expose people to. And then I'd kind of like the Construction Safety Research Alliance and their thoughts on moving away from recordable incident rates.
Right.
So,
they made a strong case.
Yeah. So there's industry standards that I think influence us a lot in a good way. But on the OSHA side, it leans a little bit more towards we're supposed to influence them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. They're supposed to take on it. That's a system in itself, taking the feedback from the people it's supposed to protect and the people it affects, right?
Yeah.
Target audience and saying, okay, this is the direction we want to go in based on the feedback, and have sort of a middle ground that's feasible for everybody.
Sure. And I have friends that work at OSHA, so that could sound a little bad. Again, I think the high performers influence OSHA, but OSHA is a great thing for the low performers that would kill people if we didn't have the law. So they kind of influence and get influenced, which is, it's the system they are, right?
And I always believe that compliance, is kind of the bare minimum. Like, it's not the gold standard. Compliance is the bare minimum. It doesn't necessarily equate to results. It's the bare minimum for liability, for legal protection. It's okay, we have nothing else on knowing how to build this house. This is the bare minimum for how we're going to build this house. Doesn't mean
okay. Well, Mark, you and I have talked before about this, and I know I'm a little different. I look at OSHA as below the minimum.
There you go.
And I just say it because, anytime you have a government system, it's going to have some element of negotiated rulemaking. I want this, you want that. Let's meet in the middle. And so because of that negotiated rulemaking,
It's going to end up dipping at some point.
It's going to dip. Yeah, there's some OSHA rules that we could follow and kill people. And again, glad OSHA's there, thankful for them. But because of that, I look at them as below the minimum, and your safety program that you have in your company, I'm going to call it the minimum, right? But OSHA might be a little bit below that, right?
That's fair. I would go with that. Like it's almost like you have compliance here, and then you have true safety management here.
Yeah.
And most people think that they're here to here, and it's like no. This is compliance.
Yeah.
This is safety management.
Because even my program I'm going to start with is not perfect. It's the minimum that we know right now, and we're at least going to do that. But even it has its own flaws. So I'm going to call the program you have as your minimum, but yeah, it's just a little notch below there.
That's fair. So my last question here is, how can we measure the success of a safety culture within an organization? And I saved this one. This is the best for last. I think you're the perfect person to answer this.
So a lot of thoughts on that. One, I don't want to sound like self-promotion, but we've been doing safety culture assessments for a long time, and it's something that kind of gives twofold. One, you get a little bit of data on what are people's opinions of the safety process, and that's something that you can measure. Are we getting better every few years? But then it also kind of gives some grassroots suggestions of here's common themes that we see. Like, let's say we don't do a good needs assessment of the project before we show up. And then next year we measure and we find out people aren't thinking that as much. And we must have gotten better with that, right?
Right.
So the safety culture assessments are one thing. But the other thing, I'm a big fan of Sidney Decker, and he's put out a paper that's on his website that anybody can go to sidneydecker.com and read this paper, but it's about replacing the recordable incident rate.
Okay.
And he kind of starts out the whole thing. This is new territory of really doing effective measurement of improvement in success in a safety culture. Something that we don't have widespread, everybody's doing it. So we're still figuring it out. I'm going to start with that we're figuring it out. But some ideas he has that make a lot of sense are, did we have specific learning events? Like, on year one, did we go out and 4 times we got a group of workers together just for learning where the system holes are? And then next year, did we do that 8 times? Okay. Well, you can show you are performing better, and take something simple like we've reported a hazard and it took X amount of time to correct it. Let's say it took a week to fix it. But next year we were able to track that we're 50% quicker. Like now it only takes us 3.5 days to fix something. And in the past,
we spoke about this, right?
Yeah, we did talk about this.
Part of showing that, hey, I'm taking the feedback you're giving me and I'm doing something about it. Here are the improvements, and I'm quantifying the improvements from that feedback. So keep giving me the feedback, because this is proof that I'm actually using it for the right reasons too.
That's right. And they're all proactive measurements showing that we're getting better, we're improving, we're getting better at safety, not measuring how many flaws, mistakes, accidents we had, all the bad stuff that might be a measure of luck. It's all tracking that we're getting better. And that's what we want. I mean, that's the goal, is to just get better. I mean, we're still going to have people get injured, but can we get better at managing and acting? And those are the things. How soon does it take the first new worker to go through the orientation process and get all the training they need? Are we getting better? When you train someone, does it show up in the field? Are we getting better? And if you take this kind of proactive, leading indicator, buzzword type of things, and you could compare them to number of man hours worked.
Sure.
And so did we have this many learning sessions per man hours worked? Now you can get some really good data that's based on the population size and all of that. But, those kind of things would be a great one to measure.
I like that. That makes sense. Well, Philip, I really appreciate you coming on today and explaining all of this to us. I think it gave a really good insight into what safety culture really means and the domino effect that, human behavior and even the management system can have. on the safety culture, right? It's kind of a domino effect. If you don't have a good system that takes the feedback and improves over time, allows for people to communicate upward, then it's not going to work.
That's right.
Huh?
Well, Mark, when I met you, I could tell right away that you're a special person, and you're going to do great things in the safety profession. And I really appreciate all the things that you're doing to help people.
I appreciate that. High five. Boom. Okay, well, folks, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned and stay safe. We'll be back next time. Bye-bye.